Welcome back to the Modern Hippie Podcast. I am so excited today to have Jason Feltz with me, who is a founder, a serial entrepreneur, Fortune 500 brand advisor, philanthropist, producer, and now author of the soon-to-be-released Hollywood Virgin. Jason is the founder and CEO of Virgin's Entertainment Company, which is where he and I met when I became an intern at Virgin Produced. So thank you so much for joining me today, Jason.
Of course. What a wonderful full circle moment this is for us.
I know. I was trying to do the math on it today, and I realized that must have been about 10 years ago.
Wow.
Wow. I went and interned at Virgin Produced. And what I remember about you so splendidly was you crashed my interview for the internship position. And I don't know if you remember this, but you came in and you were like, I heard that there was a pro wakeboarder here interviewing for an intern position. And I wanted to meet you.
I remember that. No, I've always gravitated towards to people who just do life differently, and especially people who are thrill seekers and risk takers. And I remember vividly walking into the lobby, and I was going to go into the conference room, and they told me that you were interviewing, and I was like, I got to meet this person. So, wow, great memory, Barrett.
Yeah, well, it was such a highlight for me because I love Virgin. I've always loved Virgin as a brand, and working there was just unlike any other production company. I mean, after that, I went on to become a story editor, an editor, a producer, a director, all those things. But there was still like no other company quite like Virgin.
Yeah. It's a very special brand that Richard envisioned and launched, and it's now been around for 51 years. So you got a taste of it. I got almost 2 decades of it, but it's a mindset. It's a lifestyle brand at its core. It's not about selling products or services. It's a mindset, and it sort of starts with the people who work there. And so I'm glad that you were able to know my story just by virtue of sort of having lived a small piece of it, which is cool and makes this even more exciting and a great full circle moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, very meaningful, as I invited you over a year ago to interview on the podcast. And you're like, wait until my book.
I know.
And the Hollywood Virgin is finally coming out on February 11th, which is so exciting. Tell me a little bit about what you've written.
Yeah, sorry to push you off, but I had to make sure that I got my book done first. I think you met me a very long time ago. You just pointed out 10 years ago, and I've always been behind the camera. So this is a little awkward for me, sort of being in front of the camera. I've always been behind the guy, right? Behind Richard or behind anybody that I work for, or behind the movie, behind the scenes, behind the curtain, whatever. And so to be promoting this book, which is a very personal story, which took me about 2.5 years to write, and a lot of reflection and a lot of deep digging. But I'm excited to share it. It's a love story. It's a love story for Los Angeles. It's a love story between a young, unaware, unsure dreamer who desired this life and created it in a lot of ways. There was a bit of luck thrown in there, but I believe in manifestation and manifesting and working hard and diligently and persistence. And so it's cool to be able to share that now in Hollywood Virgin. I'm sure you noticed the subtitle, Breaking In to and Out of Show Business, which is like the whole notion of breaking into it, but then like finding my way out of it, right? And then somewhere in between there, coming out personally and that journey. We can't forget about the subtitle.
Yeah, well, and you also kind of have this subtitle of chewed up but not spit out. And I think that happens to so many people in the entertainment industry, and on my own reflections of my own career as a producer and executive producer and director, and by the end of it, just feeling like, oh my God, I don't want to work 60-hour weeks anymore. I don't want to work 70-hour weeks anymore. And reflecting that I felt like I had no life outside of just being dedicated to the cause of producing things for other people. And leaving that got me into the healing arts. And so I'm so interested to hear more about your journey, because I also discovered from reading your bio that the PR team sent over that you were the youngest CEO of a Virgin brand, aside from Richard Branson himself.
Which I didn't remember. I actually did not remember that. So the crazy thing is that I jumped into this role. I was charged with creating a business plan, and I sent over a PowerPoint presentation. And they're like, no, it has to be a business plan, like with numbers. And I'm like, what do you mean numbers? Like this is my vision. And they're like, no. That just shows how naive and unaware and young I was But fortunately, Richard saw something and believed in my ability to just say yes and jump in and figure it out, which is really at its core his philosophy on life and business, and surrounding yourself with people who complement you and know the things that you don't know. So yeah, to be told that I was the youngest CEO in the history of Virgin besides Richard was a sort of I was like, oh, that's actually an interesting fact that I wasn't aware of. I mean, I sensed it. I sensed it because everybody had gray hair and were much wiser than me. But to be told that, I was like, oh, that's it. It was endearing, but it explained my naivety. And I look back at some old emails and like videos of me, and I was like, wow, I was such a kid. I was such a kid. I was in my 20s. Crazy.
Wow.
I know.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
And now to see that like you've become good friends with Richard Branson. I love that he wrote the foreword to Hollywood Virgin, and he's become, I'm sure, a mentor as well. How did that relationship evolve? At what point did you meet Richard, and at what point was he like, I'm going to take you under my wing, kid?
I met him on Necker Island at this think tank, this gathering, and Richard has a habit of hosting events down on Necker Island, which is his home, where he invites down groups who represent maybe a certain industry, and they're either for nonprofit purpose work or they're for collaborations and think tanks and brainstorms and problem solving. And so I found myself on Necker Island with my business partner, Justin Burfield. We had a small little production company called J2 at the time. We're producing some TV shows. He was on a TV show at the time, or just finished one. And we found ourselves down on Necker Island. And 1 week turned into several weeks on the island, a 1 week trip, and then turned into a very thought-provoking discussion with Richard and the other people who were there. And that's when I learned who Richard was. I didn't know who Richard Branson was. This was pre-Virgin America, pre-Virgin Hotels, pre-Virgin Voyages. This was after the mega stores had shut down. So there really was no Virgin presence in America, unless you flew Virgin Atlantic. There just wasn't. And so it's not like I knew who he was. I was invited to an island, and I thought, oh, always say yes to an invite to an island. and then when I got down there, I realized, wow, there's like Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the founders of Google, talking about how they had just acquired YouTube. And when I was asked about my views on content consumption behavior, and will people still go to the theater, or do you think they're going to continue to adopt this DVD rental through the mail with Netflix? And Larry Page and Sergey Brin were talking about how they had just acquired YouTube, and it was about short form content, and it was about streaming content. And I reinforced that discussion. Little did I know who they were. I didn't even know who they were. But I reinforced that with my views on content consumption behavior, which was like, yeah, I like watching content on my phone. I don't really go to the theater, and I want sort of short bites. And so it was this magical moment meeting Richard where I didn't really know who he was, and I didn't know who the other guests were. And I think that naivety and that sort of ability to be green is a beautiful thing, to not research everybody before you meet them, right? To not know everything about them and have these preconceived notions of who people are is something I think you learn with age. You learn that there's beauty in discovery. There's beauty in discovering things about people and industries and mindsets and methodologies. And so that for me was the moment when I met Richard. And then to your point about our relationship evolving, it did, and it has. And we are close friends. He will always be a forever mentor to me. The book reinforces the power of mentors throughout, because he wasn't my first mentor. I'm sure he's not going to be my last. And I had a wonderful moment where, after leaving Virgin, I was asked to architect and author some of the curriculum for his masterclass. And so as a student, a real life student of his masterclass, him being a mentor, me being a mentee and running business, I had the opportunity to choreograph the curriculum for his masterclass, which tens of thousands of people download to learn from Richard Branson. So to be a student, a real life student, is an honor. And so for him to then write the foreword for me, it was amazing, because I sold the book. I set up the publishing deal without Richard on it. And so it wasn't like I had sort of like dad. So it was very special to have identified and set it up at a publisher without him. And so then when he read the book and said he would love to write the foreword, it took me 1 second to say, absolutely, thank you. Wow. It was an honor. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
pretty
It's giving me
special.
goosebumps just to hear about for you.
Yeah. So that was a very long answer to your very short question, but
I love it. And what would you say were the top 3 things that you learned from him? If you were to distill down all of those years of tutelage and mentorship, what do you think were the 3 most important things you were mentored on?
I can tell you very easily. 1, surround yourself with people who know the things that you don't know, because you don't know everything. Embrace what you know your lane, be okay with dipping in and out of your lane and going into other, but surround yourself with people who are really good at the other stuff, right? And that's a secret to success. Number 2 is master the art of delegation, right? Like don't try and hold on to everything as a leader. Oftentimes leaders hold on to everything because they don't want to share their institutional knowledge because they've got their own insecurities, job security. And instead of sort of paying that knowledge forward and teaching people and mentoring people and helping people and sort of paying that forward. So I've had the benefit of having all these wonderful mentors in my career. Again, probably will have more, but paying that forward, I think, is key. And so I try and do that. And the third is in running businesses, ensuring that you're having a whole lot of fun. People have these conversations all the time about balance and live-work balance. I don't know why it has to be live and work and you've got to do this. Why can't it just be living? Why can't you be doing and performing a job or a task or whatever's paying your rent or your utility bills or you're buying you food? Why can't that task or that job or that career be something that's fun? Because then it's not work. And then it's not like, oh, I work so I can live. It's like, no, the whole thing should be living. What's not going to be living unless you actually are doing what you have fun doing. So anytime I see somebody that's miserable in a job, I'm like, why are you doing it? And if the answer is to make ends meet, it's like, is there something else out there that you would actually enjoy that you can also make ends meet with? So those are the 3 things I think that I learned either through osmosis with Richard or just I learned by living.
I love those. And I think especially that last one is so incredibly crucial. As the Modern Hippie Podcast, we address a lot of healing and emotional work and getting to the root of, kind of like you said, just living in that full embodied authenticity. And so what is it? What makes you thrive? What makes you come alive so that it doesn't feel like work? And was that always the case for you when you were producing, coming up through the lanes like that? Or was there a time where you were not quite living in its entirety?
I don't think that I really was living my entire full 101% undeniable, authentic self until the pandemic hit. It's a long time to not be 100% authentic. It's not that I was hiding anything. It's that I didn't really know my true self. Because I had never taken the time to stop, to slow down, to get to know myself, to understand myself, to understand why I have these idiosyncrasies, or to understand why I have these anxieties, or to understand why I have this sense of striver syndrome, that enough is not enough. I never really took that time. And it wasn't until the pandemic 2020 where it's like the world came to a screeching halt and people were kicking and screaming because their world came to a screeching halt. I was like, yes, I love this. This is amazing. World, please do not come back. I'm really enjoying getting to know myself.
What did you do to get to know yourself during that time?
Well, I paused. I stopped sort of the distractions of life. Some of the distractions of life, the sort of constant jet setting, over programmed. I was scheduled like a doctor for almost 2 decades, every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, right? You got a lunch meeting and a drinks meeting and a dinner meeting and a coffee meeting and a this meeting and a Zoom and all these things. And so just stopping, pausing, and then taking stock and surveying, what are these things I'm doing? Who am I rushing off to breakfast? To me. Why? And then lunch, and then the coffee, and then the dinner, and then the Zoom. And then it was like, okay, now that I've removed some of those things, which naturally happened during the pandemic anyway, right? Then you kind of sit in silence in a lot of ways, right? Because you're not on the phone, you're not doing Zooms, you're not running around, you're not actively meeting people. You are by yourself or whoever you are safer at home with. And so I had a lot of self-reflection time where, and I'd never had this heretofore, but I had a lot of time of just like sitting and thinking. And I would find myself getting into the things that I historically had never been interested in, like reading a book. I had only, prior to the pandemic, I had only ever read 2 books.
Wow.
Terrifying. Terrifying. I consider myself, in a lot of ways, self-taught. Real life experiences have taught me, right? A lot, and continue to. But I always shied away. I never had the attention span to sit and read. And now I am a consumer of books, whether they be physical or they be audio or they be Kindle. I am just a consumer of them. And I think that's been helpful. So those 2 things, those actions, pausing, learning, and then course correcting. Pausing, taking stock of things, learning, and then course correcting, changing the things I didn't like about myself.
What were some of those flags to you that you thought warranted changing?
I felt as though I relied too heavily on the end goals. What are the end goals? What is tomorrow? What's the next week? What are we like? What do I want to try and achieve? What do I want to buy? Where do I want to be? What do I want people to think about me? I wasn't thinking about now, the present. I was thinking about like, what does tomorrow bring? What is next week? What if I could only be this or go here or do this or get this or achieve this? It's like, no, that's not healthy. The second was I really took stock of my relationship with alcohol, because during the pandemic, you're like, it's like, let's drink the wine, let's drink the beer, let's drink the alcohol. It's like, I don't have to be anywhere. And so I had always had this like kind of interesting relationship with alcohol where I was always able to strive, achieve, sometimes overachieve, but still burn the midnight oil. Being out at that dinner event, that red carpet event, that party, coming home at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, being at that 9 a.m. meeting. And I always attributed it as like, wow, Jason, you are good at balancing. Wrong. Very unhealthy. Very unhealthy. And so when the pandemic hit and I'm refilling my drink before it's even halfway done because I don't have anywhere to be. And I was about 4 months into the pandemic doing this. I thought, oh my God, I have a very weird relationship with alcohol. And everybody has their own relationship. But I thought, I don't think I want to be in this relationship anymore. I'm not going to stop alcohol, but I'm going to get into I'm going to reframe this relationship. Alcohol and I went to counseling. Didn't go to a rehab, but I decided that I like being in a relationship with alcohol. I like it in moderation. I like having a nice glass of red wine with a beautiful dinner. It's nice. It's complimentary. It's festive. It's interesting. I like a glass of champagne in a celebratory moment. I don't like liquor. I don't like shots. They don't work for me. And I don't work for them. And I'm not in a relationship with those anymore. And I haven't been, and I don't want to be. And so because I was able to identify it, make it healthy, I was able to change it.
I love that awareness and that reflection on alcohol because I also watch it run away with so many people.
Yeah.
My story was a bit similar, and I got in legal trouble with it and all sorts of things before it was finally like, what's going on?
What am I doing?
Did you find underneath it that there was actually more of an emotional struggle, or parts of you that thought they needed masking with alcohol in some way?
I think it was anxiety. It stems back to the striver syndrome. And God, had I known I was the youngest CEO in the history of Virgin besides France, I would have put even more pressure on myself. But like, I always felt like I needed to. Oftentimes, people who achieve early or even later any level of success, whether it's success that they're measuring themselves on or someone else is measuring them, I think you adopt oftentimes, not everybody, obviously, at least with me, I was like, I suffer from a little bit of this like striver syndrome meets imposter syndrome, right? It's like, am I really the guy that won those awards? Am I really the guy that they named in the top 10, blah, blah, blah? Like, what is going on? Like, I'm not really that guy, because I have my own issues and my own struggles and my own sort of like insecurities. And I grew up middle class, and like, I don't deserve the same accolades as the other people on this list or whatever. So like, I think striver syndrome meeting imposter syndrome gave me anxiety. And I would mask the anxiety if I was nervous to go to a meeting that was like a really high profile. You'd get a meeting with like a chairman of this company or CEO of this company. I was like, and I realized that my email signature that said CEO Virgin Entertainment would open the door. And I would get the meeting with the chairman or get the meeting with the CEO instantly. Rarely was it a no. And so then you start going, oh my gosh, I just got a meeting with the CEO of this Fortune 100 corporation, Coca-Cola, whatever. I'm going to be meeting this guy. Like, do I have an issue in my own head? Like, I'm an imposter or whatever. Like, what's going on here? Then the anxiety sets in. Well, grab a glass of wine. Mm-hmm. Take a shot. Brush your teeth. Go to the dinner meeting. Bad. And so I didn't do it all the time, but I definitely did it 5 times that I know about, because I talk about them in my book a little bit, Hollywood Virgin. And one time was incredibly embarrassing, which I talk about in the book. Not embarrassing for me at the time because I didn't know. Because I had stayed out all night. I made it to the dinner, or I made it to the breakfast the next morning with the president of Warner Brothers, but I don't remember the meeting. Oof. And I made it all the way back home too, which is even scarier. And so that's a big wake-up call moment for me, for sure. And just the pandemic added to it. So anyway, so I got my relationship in the right, got all my relationships in the right place, and they're healthy, which is great.
I'm so glad to hear that. And I think that's wonderful advice for anyone who's still struggling with alcohol and that striver syndrome, and using it as the alcohol as a tool to kind of mask that, or whatever they're using to mask it with. It's I like that idea of going to counseling with alcohol.
Yeah.
Whether that's just
it's a relationship
in your own head.
Yeah. It's a relationship, right? You have your relationship, you have your personal relationship, your corporate relationship, you have your relationship with alcohol is a relationship, and surveying that relationship is, at least for me, was really important. In doing that, I found out that anxiety is only exasperated with alcohol.
So ironic, right?
I was actually like not doing, the alcohol was not, it maybe was helping me for like an hour, but then it would just make it worse, right? And so, yeah. Again, another long answer to your very simple question.
We're here for long answers.
Yeah, perfect.
One thing I wanted to ask about that I saw that you talk about in the book is you accompanied the Obamas on their first vacation post-presidency. Yes. And Obama gave you some life-changing advice. What was that?
Yeah, I actually convinced them to go to Necker Island, Richard's home, right when they left office, and had the opportunity to go with them, which was really cool. And so we got to spend about 4 days together. And there was a lot of advice that he and Michelle gave me. But I think what you're referencing was a key piece of advice, which I share in the book, which is to ensure, I'm trying to think of how best to articulate this. It's better articulated in the book, but to ensure that at the end of the day, no matter what you've achieved or you've not achieved, that you like yourself when you look in the mirror. And because you could have a boring, mundane day, or you could have a day that you would deem successful, right? Or productive. But at the end of any of these days, at the end of every one of these days, if you're not able to look into the mirror when you're brushing your teeth or you're doing whatever you're doing, your night face regimen or whatever, if you're not able to say, I love myself, not in a way that is deemed arrogant or self-absorbed, but just a general sense of, you know what? I'm happy with myself. And I love that advice because it's allowed me to take stock of how I feel about where I'm at in my life every day. And some days I look in the mirror and I go, just not content with myself today. Maybe I was a little lazier than I should have been, or maybe I procrastinated on something that I really should have focused on, or maybe I had a challenging conversation with somebody and I don't like the way how I handled it. So I don't look in the mirror every day and go, yeah, I'm happy with myself. But overall, from a net, most days you're doing that. It's a good thing. And that's been life-changing advice for me. Thanks to President Obama.
I love it. Well, gosh, to think running the country for all those years, I'm sure he has to make so many decisions that come with positives and negatives. And at the end of the day, gosh, what a challenging position for him to have to look in the mirror, or anyone in that position.
Any president, whatever your favorite flavor is, they still have to look in the mirror every day, and they have to make a decision how they want to represent themselves. And then they all have to feel a certain way about themselves.
I think that speaks so much to living in your integrity, to living with a deep depth of authenticity. And to get super woo-woo, it's like we vibrate at different frequencies, and we're discovering that authenticity is actually the highest frequency we can vibrate at, higher than gratitude, higher than love. It's authenticity, and the people around us can feel that. And you had mentioned to me before we started this interview that you had to do a lot of digging while you were writing the book to write in your most authentic voice. Talk to me about that process, and where did you discover even more authentic layers of yourself?
Well, first I had to decide what I wanted to include. So the book starts with 16-year-old Jason, the dreamer, in his high school bedroom. And it ends with an epiphany that I had during the pandemic. You get everything in between. But in outlining the book and the story, there were so many stories and so many interactions that I could have included. I probably could have written 3 versions of this book, right? I didn't include every single thing. So I had to make a conscious decision around, what do I want a future generation dreamer to take away from this book? What would I want to have read about, right, as a 16-year-old? And then what do I want my contemporary, somebody who is also in their 40s or maybe old, who still has a dream, still aspires, wants to, or has a business, or is just leaving college or what have you? In digging deeper, I needed to first make the decision that I was okay with opening the hatch, opening my brain. Because we have a perception of who we are. Our parents and friends have different perceptions of who we are. Our colleagues have different perceptions. Perfect strangers have different perceptions. Social media paints beautiful pictures because nobody ever posts when their pipe burst. They only post the good stuff and the great food and the best hotels and the best vacations, and this is never the real. And so I had to be willing to open the hatch of my brain and go, okay, where am I fucked up? Where do I perceive I'm fucked up? And am I really? Or is it just a perception based on social sort of norms and all these things, right? And so I went and started talking to a therapist, which was very new for me. It's not something I did, but it was amazing. And the first thing she said to me was, "So are you going to write this book, or are you getting a ghostwriter?" And I said, "No, I'm writing it." She goes, "Oh, we got a lot of work to do, honey." And I was like, okay, wow. Of course, the cynical part of my brain was like, oh God, you're just trying to collect fees, right? How much is this going to cost me per hour? And I thought, oh no, and then I started doing the work and answering the questions and sort of free flowing conversation. I was like, wow, this is interesting. I had a really interesting relationship with this individual or this mentor or this family member, or I had a really interesting reaction, or I buried a feeling about this situation that happened in my life. I buried that feeling. I presented a certain image around that's what happened. But the way I really felt was this. What I told everybody was Y, but what it really was Z. And then I was like, okay, if this book is meant to be bluntly honest and completely transparent and authentic, I can't bear just the pretty side of it. I got to share everything. I need to be vulnerable. Which I never.
Are you comfortable being? Well, I was just going to ask. Are you comfortable being vulnerable before?
No, not at all. I had an image to uphold. I had a cool business card that said CEO, and I had all these houses and these cars and these amazing vacations, and I had these stories that were written about me in the movies that I interacted with, or the music festivals that painted a picture of me as this like smart wonderkin. And so no, it was about the image. It was about like, what am I supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to be sharing? What are people expecting? And that's not me anymore. Now it's like, see my scars, see my warts, see my scars, this is me. This is the real me, right? And then I had to go through a whole process like, do people even give a shit? Do people even give a shit? Like, should I write this book? So I had a couple false starts with this book and me writing this book, and I was like, why am I writing this book? And it's not like it's a memoir because I'm not Meryl Streep. It's like, why am I writing a memoir? It's not a memoir. And then I was like, okay, it's a midlife memoir playing off midlife crisis. And then I was like, okay, maybe it's like a midlife memoir. And so really, I did a lot of soul searching, both for myself and then also determining or thinking that I was, trying to figure out who's the audience.
It's an important question.
Yeah. I didn't want to do a big journal entry. I didn't want to do a 240-page journal entry and this like cathartic exercise. I needed it to tell my story, but I needed it to share the takeaways in an effort to help those who might have been or are in a similar mindset.
I love that. That's going to make it so powerful because you have such incredible stories that I know you're sharing in this book, and to be able to draw those throughways as guidance for those who are on the come up. How beautiful.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
And how do you feel about vulnerability now? Is your vulnerability perceived in ways that you thought it would be? Is it perceived, do you feel negatively? Do you feel it's wonderfully received?
I think I'm a little more blunt than I used to be. And so that may turn certain circles off. So I have to curb, I can't just like belt out every thought that I have. So I kind of went the opposite, where I'd like internalized, and then I was like, no, I'm just going to share my every thought I have. I'm going to be authentic. I'm just going to share everything. Well, you can't necessarily do that. And for me, being vulnerable is a positive. It's a positive because it's helped me not only get in tune with who I am, but it's helped me be a better friend. It's helped me be a better, hopefully, son. It's helped me be a better husband. It's helped me be a better colleague because I'm listening to other people more than I'm talking. And then I'm able to share my experiences and allow people the opportunity to confide in me and be vulnerable with me, which then creates deeper connections. I thought I had all these deep connections, but all I had was connections. A massive network, lots of acquaintances, a lot of connections, but they weren't necessarily deep. And now they're all deep. And some are deeper than others, but like they're all like, I feel like I know my friends better. I feel like I know my parents better. I feel like I know my partner better because I take the time to be vulnerable and allow others to be vulnerable with me.
I absolutely love that. To me, that's the reflection of I want all of my relationships, all of my platonic friendships, all of my family relationships to just be deeply intimate in that form of deeply listening and hearing each other and holding a judgment-free space, essentially, that allows for people to reveal more of their authenticity and their vulnerability. I love how that solidifies and creates now this beautiful network of people who really care instead of just those connected drinking buddies, probably.
Yeah. Or just kind of simplified relationships, right? Where it's like, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. How are you doing? How are you doing? The answer is always good. I'm doing good. If I'm not doing well, I say, if someone says, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm okay. Everybody asked me last week because of the fires. We obviously were impacted by the Los Angeles fires. And when I would get on the phone, how you doing? And I would say, not great. I think it's okay to say, not great.
It is okay, especially for those who are listening. I understand you lost part of your home, which to a fire, what is part as opposed to all of it? I'm sure there's smoke damage and
we've got a long road ahead for sure. But material possessions don't mean as much to me as they once did. I used to be a collector of everything. How many friends can I get on Facebook? How many friends can I get on Instagram? How many cars can I have? How many houses? Like, how many cool pairs of Nike Jordans can I have? I'm not a collector of anything anymore except for memories. I just want memories. I just want to do things. I don't know what all's destroyed at my home, but I really don't care. I know that sounds crazy, but I really don't. Not anymore. Jason 6 years ago would be flipping out right now, freaking out, like would have been a whole different human being.
It's that lack of attachment to the material possessions.
Yeah,
that
for sure.
We get so attached to the things, and in that attachment it creates more anxiety, it creates more grab. I've been doing a lot of studying of Buddhist teachings in the last couple years, and one of the big things they're all about is the attachment system. And being able to just simply let go and accept that what's yours is yours, what's meant to stay yours will stay yours. And I think it's really admirable as well. You're having your book release party next week, and you're using it now as a fundraiser also for the LA Fire Department. And I also saw you're going to be matching the donations that are made. So I really want to commend you for rising to the occasion to continue to be a vulnerable leader in a space where you've also lost so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It means a lot. I try and pay things forward. It's bittersweet launching this book right now. Again, I'm not used to being in front of the camera. I'm used to being behind it. So I already was uncomfortable with self-promotion and sort of, complying with my contracts of you need to post this many times a day. And, oh gosh, I just don't want to promote myself. I just don't feel, it feels so uncomfortable. I really just feel so uncomfortable. So the fact that this is now a benefit for LA Fire Department Foundation, I'm like, awesome. I'm so excited to go to this event because we're going to go raise some money and we're going to walk away from it. I just thought, oh God, if I'm doing this red carpet event for me, this is so gross. And so I love that there's purpose behind it. So thank you. I appreciate you acknowledging.
Well, one of the things I love about it that I'm seeing so clearly reflected now in your PR campaign is the notion that you're doing these bathrobe book tours, which I love because it's kind of like the rebel
I've got so
PR
many
tour.
bathrobes in front of me right now, but I decided I would be a little more professional with you. But yes.
Oh, the bathrobe would have been so perfect, but I'm actually really excited. I've never walked a red carpet in a bathrobe before. I'm going to be coming to your release on the
Yeah.
5th. And
Great. That really stemmed from when I announced my retirement from the entertainment industry. There was some stories that were done because in Hollywood, if you're going to do anything, you have to make an announcement, right? Like if you're going to sneeze, there needs to be a press release. And before I stepped away, I just wanted to kind of just like bookend it and just be like, guys, I'm done. Like that way I wouldn't keep getting phone calls with people pitching their scripts. And when we announced that and Richard and I did the story, Richard said, I look forward to Jason playing more than he works and enjoying his life in his bathrobe. Because during the pandemic, I would just always show up to Zoom calls in different bathrobes because I just have a couple bathrobes. Then after that story came out, brands started sending me their bathrobes. So I have 61 bathrobes, Barrett.
61.
61 bathrobes. It's mind-blowing. Some of them are amazing. Some of them are like, not so good. But I keep them all and I have them. And so when I was sharing this whole thought process several years ago, and I was with people and I was like, yeah, the bathrobe. And then I did my first call with my publisher. I was showing up to my publisher meetings when I was shopping the book in bathrobes. And all the publishers were like, what are you? I was like, sorry for the bathrobe, but this is me. And then I started explaining it. And then I was like, okay, if I'm going to do a book tour, I'm not going to change who I am. Because what's the point of releasing a book about authenticity if then I'm going to go put on designer clothes and go travel around and speak at colleges or what have you? I was like, I'm going in my bathrobes. I was like, I'm going to go in my bathrobes. And if someone's interviewing me, if they're not in the bathrobe, I'm bringing them a bathrobe. And everybody in the audience is welcome to wear a bathrobe. But if you wear a bathrobe, then you're going to get a free copy of the book because I need you to be authentic, because the bathrobe symbolizes a sort of just a simplicity. Instead of somebody wearing a Louis Vuitton this and a Gucci this and a blah, blah, blah this and a Nike Air Jordan vintage Air Jordan. It's like, put all that away. Put on the bathrobe. Let's talk. And can't wait to see what everybody wears to the party. It's going to be so fun. I think kimonos are allowed also, by the way, for those who don't want to wear bathrobes. I think kimonos also it is a version of a bathrobe.
It is. It can be written off as one. It reminds me of when I was at Virgin Produced with you, and there was the thing going around with doing away with ties. Yes. And I made a graphic that you guys sent out to, I think, a lot of people who would come in for meetings that said, if you wear a tie, we will cut it off and put it on the wall.
Yes. Yes, we did. Yeah, it's because it's an archaic mindset that you have to be in a suit and tie, or you have to be in a pantsuit or a dress or a blazer to be professional. That's wrong. It's wrong, especially in the creative industry. I mean, come on. And I tap into that a little bit in my book too, when I went for a job interview and the receptionist asked me, who was I wearing? And I was like, huh?
The receptionist.
The receptionist. She's like, I'm wearing Tory Burch. He's wearing John Varvatos. Who are you wearing? And so I reveal in my book, as I pull up the tag, TJ Maxx. I'm wearing TJ Maxx. I don't even know who the hell that is, but that's who, so that was part of my naivety as well, right? I addressed this whole notion of sort of keeping up.
Well, and then you're doing a ton of other cool things to promote your book. As I started to look into that, you're doing the Virgin Voyage, which seems like so much fun to go on the cruise ship and talk about the book. And then one that I was unaware of that really stood out to me, you're going to be doing a floating book promo, which to me means you're in the 0G airplane thing. Tell me about that.
I'm going to be doing the parabolic flight with 0G. I think there's some seats left on my flight. We have to look, but on HollywoodVirgin.com. But yeah, we're going to be floating the book. So the actual book will be floating in zero gravity as we descend on the parabolic flight. Or actually, it floats when you go down.
Cool.
Yeah, so it should be fun. Looking forward to it. I love that company. I love what they're doing. It's kind of people's first step into space. You know, if you're not going to go up into space with Virgin Galactic or Blue Origin, or maybe you have plans to do it later in life, this is your first step in. And so I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the voyage. I'm excited about all the college stops and the bookstore stops. And that'll be for February. And then in March, the audiobook comes out and we'll do it again. And then in April, the book comes out international and we'll do an international tour, all in our bathrobes.
Amazing. Will you be reading your book?
A couple stops I'm reading the first chapter, Peaches, which is 16-year-old Jason. And then one stop I'm reading the Epiphany chapter that I had, which is titled What Matters. And then some of the conversation is going to be had with Dr. Rod Berger, who's joining me on some of the North American tour, where he's going to lead the conversation. It'll be less reading, it'll be less story time, and more thought leadership discussion and Q&A. And then anybody that wants me to scribble into their book, scribble something, and then, yeah, there we go. So it should be fun.
Oh, I love that. It sounds absolutely brilliant. Just a reminder for everyone, the book comes out officially on February 11th. We will have all of those linked up in the show notes, and I'm so excited to continue tracking your journey. And any last words? I'd love to just get your last thought for someone who's looking to deepen their own authenticity. What recommendation do you have for them?
That's a great question. I think that the first reasonable step that doesn't cost tons of money with therapy or whatever is to set a vacation, plan a vacation. It can be a couple nights, it could be a weekend. Plan a vacation with just yourself. Book a flight. Tell your family and friends where you're going, so that way they know. Book a flight, get to the location, have your dinner reservations, all your reservations, everything set. So that way, when you get there, you can turn off your phone. Print out your itinerary of what you're going to do with the addresses. Don't rely on your phone. Plan the vacation, because what that's going to do is it's going to shut off the noise. And the noise is people with you, your schedule, your phone, your social media, your LinkedIn, your blah, whatever. And have the paper itinerary. Have the paper itinerary. I write things down. I know that sounds very archaic, but I write things down because I love the practice of scratching it out. But print out the feeling of accomplishment. But I say, plan a vacation for yourself, because that's going to give you the space to get to know yourself on a different level. It's going to be scary for the first day because there's a lot of thoughts that are going to be going and there'd be buzzing and you're going to want to turn the phone on. Don't do it. But take yourself on a vacation. I think that's the first step. Because if you don't know yourself and you're not trying to make a conscious effort to have that discussion with yourself with zero distraction, how can you really be authentic? Don't know.
I love that advice. I love. Personally makes me so excited because at the end of February, I'm headed off on vacation to a solitary retreat this will be my 4th time there in the last 7 or 8 years. And I turn my phone off and it's like me, nature, no phones. Sometimes I even do a day without time. So no
love
clocks.
that. Love that.
It's harder than it seems.
It's cool though. I've gotten to a point now where I know around what time it is based on the sun pattern coming through the window. Not here because this is an Airbnb, but like at my home. And I love that. I love not looking at the clock or looking at your phone or looking at a watch. I love that. So I think setting a vacation with yourself is a great first step.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Jason. This has been such a pleasure to reconnect with you, and I'm so excited to share your book, especially one that I feel like I had a minuscule moment in time with you, and continue to share more and wish you all the best on this book tour.
You as well. Thank you so much. And I'm really excited to have joined the podcast and can't wait to continue following along. And I'll see you on February 5th at the release party for the book.
I will see you then.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.